Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where Karen is demanding her husband build a mansion for her. Am I the jerk for telling my wife that the house we're gonna build won't have 5 extra rooms for her family? I was looking at house plans to submit to the town hall for approval for an acre that we own out in Minnesota. The plan is for a 4-bedroom home, 1 bedroom for my wife and me, 1 for each of our 2 kids, and 1 extra room to serve as a playroom or a game room. However, my wife asked, "Where's my family staying?" It turns out she had already promised her family that they would move in with us, and now she's furious, saying, "You only care about yourself. What about me?" I told her that I never agreed to having her family live with us from the start. Now she's looking to sell the land out from under me, maybe to prove a point. I'm honestly at a loss here. Here's a bit of context. The land is owned jointly by my wife and me. We bought it using the life insurance payout we received after the loss of our daughter in 2021. Since then, I've gotten a job in manufacturing with a federal government contractor, and we've been planning to build this house for our family. Her family has no stake or rights to our land, legally speaking, but I received a call from the town registrar asking about ownership change inquiries for the property. We actually own 2 parcels, and I offered to sell 1 parcel to her siblings for market value if they're interested. She refused that idea. The house construction would be paid by me, which makes it even more frustrating to think of her family moving in without my agreement. I suggested that if her family really wanted to live close by, I would build an ADU, accessory dwelling unit, on the property. However, I also insisted that they'd need to pay market rate rent, about $900 per room. She wasn't open to that suggestion either. So now, my current course of action is to transfer my ownership of the land into a trust, naming my kids as the primary owners. I'm including specific instructions that only my direct descendants may build on or live on the property. Not the jerk. I'm guessing her family would also be a financial burden. Why else would they need to live with you? That many functioning adults should be able to pool together, buy their own land, and build their own house. However, who owns the land? You may be selling it soon to divide the marital assets anyway, if you really don't want your wife's relatives living with you. If the land is in her family or was her inheritance, I'd change my vote. But if you purchased it together, my vote stands. Am I the jerk for asking my sister to replace my jelly beans after her son ate them? First, I recently invited my family over for dinner at my new condo. I'm really proud of this place. It took years of saving, hard work, and sacrifice to get here. It's small, but it's mine, and I wanted to celebrate with a nice family dinner. I decided to make homemade spaghetti. I spent hours on it, crisp pancetta, freshly grated Parmesan, and the perfect sauce. Carbonara is all about timing and texture, so I stayed in the kitchen paying close attention to every step. I even added garlic bread, salad, and made a cheesecake for dessert. It was a big effort, and I wanted the evening to feel special. Now, I keep a big jar of jelly beans on my coffee table as a treat. I love picking out a few here and there, and I always save the cream soda ones for last. They're my favorite. The jar has lasted a long time, and it's something I enjoy after a long day. My sister, Laura, who's 35, brought her 7-year-old son, who's honestly a bit of a handful. He's not used to hearing no and tends to think every space is his to do whatever he wants. My sister has never set limits with him, and growing up, our parents spoiled her too. While I was in the kitchen, my nephew found the jelly bean jar. I didn't notice at first because I was focused on getting the spaghetti just right. After dinner, I went to grab a handful of jelly beans and realized that almost all of the cream soda ones were gone. My nephew had picked them out, leaving a mess of crumbs and broken bits. I pulled Laura aside and mentioned it, asking if she had noticed. She just shrugged and said, "Oh, he only likes the cream soda ones, so he picked those out. No big deal." I tried to be polite, but I told her that those were my favorites and asked her if she could replace them or at least get me some more of the cream soda flavor. She got annoyed and snapped, "He's just a kid. You're seriously this worked up over jelly beans?" I explained that it wasn't about the jelly beans. It would have been nice if she had kept an eye on him or taught him to ask first. Laura rolled her eyes and said, "Then don't leave temptations out if you don't want kids getting them." I asked her one more time to either replace the jar or just the cream soda ones, but she refused, calling me petty and saying I was blowing things out of proportion. My parents jumped in to back her up, telling me to drop it and that I should know better than to have temptations out around him. To me, it's not about the money, it's about respect and boundaries. I put a lot into that dinner, and her response was to let her son treat my place like his personal candy store. Now my family thinks I'm overreacting, but I feel that this is about respecting boundaries. Am I the jerk for asking my sister to replace the cream soda jelly beans her son ate? Edit. I'll accept my verdict, since apparently it's normal these days to allow a kid to root through a jar of jelly beans like a hog hunting for truffles. What I won't accept and what I won't tolerate are the insults about my competency as a home chef. Let me walk you through the process so you understand why real carbonara takes time and why cutting corners would be a disgrace. First, I went to this authentic Italian market, and I spent a lot of time on this meal, and they should have appreciated it. So yes, it took hours, and I'm not ashamed to say that. Given the limits of this subreddit, you're the jerk. But really, you're just being petty. They're jelly beans. They aren't expensive, and they make more every day. Buy some cream soda jelly beans and hide the jar whenever nephew comes over, which probably won't be often considering you're making a big deal about jelly beans. Congratulations on the condo, though. Agreed. If you choose to be child-free or don't really know how to interact with or be around kids, that's your own choice. But if you're going to invite them over to your house, you can't expect them to not act like kids. And this is coming from someone who is child-free by choice. You're hosting. You have candy set out in a common area. You should assume it will be eaten. You chose to make a complex meal that takes specific timing. I'm assuming they didn't specifically request it, and you did so knowing that there was a kid present who, let's be honest, is probably not going to understand or care about how much time went into it. There's a reason kids' menus have basic things like cheese noodles and burgers and chicken fingers. And don't even get me started on the cream soda ones are my favorite. Well, they're his too. How is he supposed to know that they're your favorites? If you don't want them eaten, put them away. And for goodness sake, you're making carbonara. You're fancy. You can get another bag of jelly beans. Amazon exists. Buy yourself an entire bag of just the cream soda ones. Frankly, you sound very immature. You talk about him being spoiled and not raised right, but you sound to me as if you haven't been socialized to the extent that I would expect a grown adult with siblings and a nephew to be. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her sister? Please let us know. I know I never would have done that when I was little. I would have asked my mom if I could have some, but I wouldn't have just rummaged through it. That's really rude. That was a long time ago, Karen. Kids are raised different these days. Heck, my ears are still ringing from the dentist waiting room yesterday. That's another thing. I don't get why the kids scream so much and their parents don't tell them to be quiet. When I was little and my parents took me to the dentist, I was quiet and well behaved. I wasn't running around grabbing stuff and screaming. The parking feud that finally got a solid solution. I work at a niche retail store located in the heart of town. Our customers are dedicated and often travel from afar just to visit us, so having a clear and accessible parking lot is crucial for our business. Unfortunately, our next-door neighbors, a family-run landscaping and garden supply store, have been a thorn in our side for years when it comes to parking. The tension between my boss and the landscaping store owners goes back over a decade, long before I joined, all over something trivial. I heard that the landscaper once complained about a tree on our side of the lot, which he thought was unsightly for his customers. It was the pettiest neighbor drama you could imagine, but it festered for years. The final straw came after lockdown, when in-person business started picking up again, and our parking lot became overflowing with cars, many belonging to the landscaping store's customers. Our two parking lots are connected, with ours being about twice the size of theirs. However, the landscaper had decided to reserve almost all of his spaces for his landscaping vans, which ironically were rarely there during business hours. As a result, his customers parked in our lot, leaving us with few spaces for our own customers. Trying to be reasonable, my boss approached the landscaper with a suggestion. He proposed that they adjust their parking setup to free up a few more spaces for customers, and even offered that their vans could park in our lot if theirs were ever full. But the landscaper shot down the idea immediately, insisting it was absolutely crucial to reserve all those spaces for his vans, even though they were hardly ever there during the day. The conversation turned heated, ending with my boss threatening to put up a fence to separate the lots. The landscaper, practically daring him, shot back, "Go ahead," probably knowing how expensive that would be. As you can imagine, it ended with both of them storming off and not speaking for 2 years. Typical neighbor stuff. Fast forward to recently, and we got a golden opportunity when a parking management company approached us with a proposal. They offered to install automatic license plate cameras to enforce parking, allowing us to find vehicles that stayed beyond a generous 3-hour free window, if they hadn't paid. The setup would be free, we'd get most of the revenue, and they would keep any fines issued. It was perfect, especially since we were losing spaces to freeloaders. It wouldn't really impact customers of nearby stores, and if anyone had a good reason to park for longer, we could grant an extension at our discretion. For the cameras to work, they needed to cover both our entrance and the landscaping store's entrance. Being considerate again, my boss had the parking company reach out to the landscaper to explain the deal and benefits. But true to form, the landscaper didn't even let the rep finish before kicking him out, making it very clear that under no circumstances would his lot become a paid parking zone. Instead of going through the hassle and expense of putting up a fence, my boss had a better idea: big rocks. One of his construction buddies had a stash of leftover rocks from a recent project and offered to place them for a great price. The parking company even agreed to front the cost to be repaid through future parking revenue. On Monday morning, before opening hours, one of the buddy's employees, a big burly guy with arms like tree trunks, arrived with a truck and crane to place the rocks. The rocks were neatly spaced to allow pedestrians to walk with carts, but completely blocked vehicle access. The landscaper stormed out, yelling and trying to intimidate the workers into stopping. But the worker, unfazed, calmly told him to step back down for his own safety, which made that much smaller landscaper back down and retreat in frustration. The rocks weren't just a physical barrier, they quickly became a mental obstacle for the landscaper's employees. Their muscle memory kept bringing them into our lot, only for them to realize too late that they couldn't drive through anymore. We watched from our newly installed surveillance cameras just in case the neighbors tried anything, struggling not to burst out laughing as their vans ended up awkwardly stuck. They'd have to reverse out and go all the way around to their own entrance, only to perform a series of painful maneuvers to squeeze into their now much smaller parking lot. At one point, we even saw one of their vans clipping a rock while trying to maneuver, a little bonus for us. The next day, the parking company arrived to install the license plate cameras and set up the signage, which took a few hours. Throughout the installation, the landscaper's family members prowled around our lot, snapping photos and videos as if they were on a mission to find a violation. But the parking company was very professional and had done everything by the book, so there was nothing for them to report. Meanwhile, my boss was positively glowing with satisfaction as he helped direct the installation. Here's the best part. We noticed that the neighbor's family had started parking their personal vehicles in our lot, likely out of spite to mess with us. One day, my coworker saw one of the family members dash out of their store and sprint to their car. We thought it was odd at the time, but didn't think much of it until the following week, when the landscaper's son came into our store looking a bit embarrassed. Apparently, he had accidentally overstayed the 3-hour limit and received a $150 fine. The son practically begged us to waive it, insisting it was just a simple mistake. My boss politely responded, "Oh, I'd really love to help, but it's out of our control now. The parking company handles all the fines." The look on his face was priceless. He left, shoulders slumped, retreating back to their store. Ever since, our lot has been blissfully clear, and our customers have had no trouble finding spaces. Meanwhile, the landscapers have been grumbling as they struggle to maneuver their vans, still pretending they're not bothered. As for my boss, he's been smiling a lot more lately. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people get exactly what they asked for. Am I the jerk for asking my girlfriend to stop involving her imaginary friend, Tom, in our relationship? So, when I started dating Sarah, I thought I hit the jackpot. Smart, funny, and gorgeous. We've been together for about a year, and everything seemed pretty normal. But recently, I discovered that she has an imaginary friend named Tom. I had no idea about Tom when we got together. At first, I thought she was just joking around when she'd say things like, "Tom says you're funny," or "Tom thinks we should order pizza." I laughed it off, assuming Tom was a goofy inside joke, but now it's like Tom's some kind of relationship therapist that I never hired. We were having a serious talk the other night, and out of nowhere she said, "Tom thinks you're overreacting." I just stared at her thinking, oh great, I'm getting double-teamed by my girlfriend and her imaginary friend. So I finally asked her, "Can Tom maybe stay out of our conversation?" Sarah looked crushed and told me that Tom has been her rock for years. Now she's barely talking to me, and it's like Tom's got beef with me too. Am I the jerk for asking her to keep Tom out of our relationship, or do I just need to make peace with my invisible rival? I'd be worried that Tom is a persistent delusion, like legitimately a mental health delusion. You're not the jerk, but I was immediately concerned about Tom being a mental health issue. OP. I've thought about that, and it's definitely a concern. She seems fully aware that Tom isn't real, but he still plays a big role in her life. I'm trying to figure out the best way to approach this without making her feel judged or unsupported. Maybe a conversation about it could help us both understand where it's coming from. Not the jerk. There's a possibility that she's suffering from severe delusions and needs a psychiatrist like yesterday. It's not necessarily dangerous, but it's certainly unpredictable. The more likely case is that she's always used him as a manipulation tactic. Any disagreement in your relationship will end up with you being ganged up on. Tom will always cast the tie-breaking vote. Spoiler, he'll always side with her. OP. Yeah, Tom's definitely the ultimate yes man. I swear, he never disagrees with her. It's like I'm in a relationship with a built-in tiebreaker that I can never win. Maybe I should get my own imaginary friend for backup. Wonder if she'd let Jerry cast a vote. Update. Tom's origin story, and it's weirder than I expected. Alright, buckle up, because things just got even stranger. After reading all of your comments, I decided it was finally time to have the talk with Sarah about Tom. So we're sitting there, and I gently bring up how Tom's presence in our relationship is, well, a bit much. She laughs at first, but then suddenly gets this serious look and says, "Okay, I guess it's time I told you the truth about Tom." Now I'm thinking she's going to say that it's just a silly thing she made up as a kid, but no. She takes a deep breath and tells me that Tom wasn't just an imaginary friend. He was her boyfriend back in high school. Yep, you read that right. Apparently, Tom was her ideal boyfriend during her teenage years. In other words, real boys were just disappointments. She used to imagine him as this super supportive, hilarious guy who'd always take her side and back her up. And somehow, even after she started dating actual people, Tom just stuck around. Now I'm sitting here thinking, great, I'm in a love triangle with an imaginary high school boyfriend. She reassures me that it's not like that now, but I can't help but wonder if I'm competing with the ultimate perfect boyfriend who's literally never too good to be true. So I guess I'll try to make peace with my invisible rival. But just so you know, if I ever hear her whisper, "Thanks, Tom," under her breath again, I might actually lose it. Would I be the jerk if I told my wife she can't take our 3-month-old daughter to Australia on holiday without me? So my wife and I just welcomed our firstborn into the world. The last 6 months with her have been absolutely incredible. We both love her to bits. It's been an intense learning curve, but every day there's something new to marvel at with her. There's something hanging over both of us right now, though. About 6 months ago, my wife mentioned in passing that she'd like to travel to Australia with the baby to visit her family for a couple of weeks during maternity leave. We didn't really discuss it in depth at the time. I think I just said something like, "Okay, cool, let's maybe wait until the baby's here safely." My wife didn't really push the point, and I didn't think much of it. Fast forward to a week ago, and we're set at the dinner table with my wife's family and our month-old daughter. They start talking about specific flights and plans they're making. Australia hadn't been mentioned to me for 6 months. I had no idea it was going ahead, and it turns out the trip is only a matter of weeks away, 9 to be exact. All I could feel was sheer panic, and I realized I really don't want to spend that long not seeing my amazing new baby, and my wife too. After dinner, I told my wife how I felt. I knew she had mentioned the idea before, but hearing the detailed plans had me panicking because it was becoming a reality. I really don't want her to go to the other side of the world, we live in London, with our newborn without me. I don't think she's fully considered how difficult and stressful it would be to fly solo long haul with a baby and 3 weeks worth of luggage. But from my perspective, I don't want my daughter to be that far away from me for that long at such an early age. I'm just used to being a dad, and all I want to do with every moment of my spare time right now is spend it with my new family. During those 3 weeks, I could miss some amazing first moments, and should anything happen, I'd be absolutely helpless 10,000 miles away. Me traveling for 3 weeks on such a short notice is out of the question. I can't get that time off work. Does it make me a jerk for not wanting them to go? We still haven't had a proper conversation about it yet, and she wants to fly out during the first week in January. It's tough because I know she wants her family to meet our daughter, and she wants to go while she has time off for maternity leave, but it just seems way too soon. Would I be the jerk if I said I didn't want them to go? Would I be the jerk if I straight up stopped them from going? Edit. From what I've read so far, this might help clarify things. My wife's not actually from Australia. She's a Londoner, born and bred, with most of her direct family also in London. The Australia trip, which hasn't been booked yet, is to see some stepsisters and their kids. Her mom and stepdad are planning on flying there too for an extended trip, but their flight dates won't align with hers. My family isn't that close by. They live in the north of Scotland. It's a solid 9-hour drive, so they haven't seen our daughter as much as they'd like. I totally agree that I didn't push for more details when it was first brought up, and that's on me. No dates were floated, it was just an idea. I probably thought it was so far in the future that we could talk it through once the baby was here. Me going for a week isn't really an option. Flights are incredibly expensive, around 24 hours of travel time, and then there's adjusting to a completely different time zone, plus 12 hours. Lastly, a couple of reflections I've had this morning, after reading lots of You're the Jerks. Yep, I'm probably blowing this out of proportion in my head. I've read a lot of other people's personal stories, which has put this in perspective. I'll probably feel differently come 2 months from now. My wife is more than capable of flying there solo. She was an absolute superhero giving birth. That said, I still think a good chunk of my anxiety about this is valid, and it's a bit of a difficult situation for me to face right now. Lastly, being a dad is truly awesome. I just have to keep that in mind. No jerks here. But I wonder if your wife has been more clear about her plans and maybe you weren't paying attention. Of course you want to spend all your time with your baby, but your wife has been clear this is important to her, and it is. I've traveled with babies, and it's a hassle, but doable. I went from the US to South Africa when my oldest was 9 months old. It's fine. Your wife is going to see her family. She's not going to a war zone. I think if you deny this trip, the resentment from her and her family will be long-lived and very difficult to get over. Husband upset I didn't invite his family to my birthday celebration. My husband and I just got married last year, and about a month after our wedding, it was my birthday. We invited both my family and my in-laws to celebrate at our place. This year, for my birthday, my parents suggested a small, intimate celebration with just my immediate family, parents, siblings, brother-in-law, and husband. I didn't argue because I was okay with it. I was honestly torn between wanting everyone there, including extended family and in-laws, or just us. We haven't done a just us birthday in years. A couple of days before my birthday, I told my husband it would just be my immediate family and he was fine with it. When the day came, my mom made a meal of my choice and we had a small cake. It was a quiet, cozy celebration. Now, today is my sister's birthday. My husband asked if he should invite my in-laws, but I said no since it was last minute and we were planning something very simple, a homemade cake for my brother-in-law and me. Plus, it's my sister's birthday, so I didn't think she'd want my in-laws there, especially since she isn't even inviting her own in-laws. This made my husband upset. He told me I never want to invite his family to anything and pointed out that I hadn't invited them to my birthday last month either. He said, "They're your family too. You never invite them for anything." I reminded him that we did invite his family last year for my birthday and that I'd also suggested inviting them over on weekends, but he clarified that he meant birthdays or other special events. I then brought up how he had never invited my family to his birthdays or celebrations while we were dating, but he argued that it was different because we weren't married then. He felt like I was only mentioning it to get back at him, which wasn't my intention. Do you usually invite your in-laws to every event, celebration, or birthday? Am I wrong for not inviting my in-laws to my small birthday celebration? Not wrong. You get to decide who you want to celebrate your birthday with. He gets to do the same for his birthday. Once you have kids, for their birthdays, if you're inviting one set of grandparents, you invite both. For your sister, she is in no way related to your in-laws. They had no place at her birthday. Tell your husband that he can invite his family to his events that he plans. You two got married and are your own family unit. You're adults. You do not have to include either sets of parents or siblings in anything. I always included my in-laws. They lived close to us and I truly loved them. My own family lived across the country and were rarely included. Graduations and weddings, they were invited. Just do what's best for you. Am I the jerk for expecting my daughter to stick to our chores for rent deal? So I have a 20-year-old daughter who's currently living with me rent-free while she attends college. When she moved back home, we made a deal where she would cook and clean the house as a form of payment for her living here. She agreed to it and we both thought it was fair. However, recently, she approached me and said that the cooking and cleaning are taking up too much of her time, making it hard for her to study and complete her homework. She asked if I could reduce the number of days she has to cook to give her more time for her studies. I told her that she should be grateful for the deal I offered her, and that it's not that hard to do a few hours of chores compared to what many kids her age are going through. I pointed out that some of her peers are working 9 to 5 while going to school simultaneously, and I've given her the luxury of just handling some household chores in exchange for free housing. She ended up calling her aunt, my sister, behind my back to complain about how I'm treating her, and my sister called me and kind of went off on me, basically saying I'm being too strict and I should listen to my daughter. Here's where I'm unsure if I'm being the jerk. I want to stick to the agreement we made, but my sister's words had me questioning my stance. Am I the jerk for not wanting to change the deal we initially made? I thought it was a fair deal. Edit. I wasn't expecting this post to blow up. Just to address some things. For one, I'm my daughter's father, not her stepmother. Her mother is no longer with us, and I'm currently single. This isn't a Cinderella story. 2, I'm not a jerk for making my daughter cook for my sons who are still kids. They don't know how to cook, let alone clean themselves. 3, I'm not trying to take advantage of her. As I said in my post, a lot of people her age would love to be in the position she's in right now. I'm paying for her college, and all I expect back from her is a homemade meal. I appreciate the feedback, but a lot of bad assumptions were made about me, so I had to clear it up. Edit 2. After reading a lot of you guys' comments, I'm leaning towards making an ultimatum with my daughter. Either she can get a job and pay some of the rent so she no longer has to consistently cook and clean anymore, or she can continue with the deal I initially offered her. To compromise a little bit, I might change some of the days she has to cook and clean to days where she has more free time to do so. I believe if she decides to take a 9 to 5, she will eventually realize just how good the offer I initially made with her was. Some may think I'm being harsh, but my stance is different on that, because at her age, I was going to school and I paid full rent by myself with no help from my family, so I believe this to be a fair compromise. You're the jerk for not listening properly to your daughter. You say, many people do this, that, and the other. Well, your daughter is not many people. She is overwhelmed with the sum of her duties right now. She's just asking you not to have to cook some of the days of the week so that she can catch up on her schoolwork. Is that so terribly unreasonable? I don't think so. You could let her not cook on the weekends. The whole arrangement can be evaluated in 3 months to see how it works for your family. That would be a reasonable arrangement. You're the jerk. You sound like Cinderella's stepmother. This is your daughter who is attending college and you're treating her like a full-time maid. You're not asking her to do some chores. You have her cooking and cleaning full-time for a family. That's a huge difference. At the very least, the cooking needs to stop. You cook for your kids and clean up after them. Then, if you want to assign a list of weekly chores, fine. Things that are done once and completed until next week, but not daily cleaning up after 3 people. That's exhausting, and that's your job. You're the jerk. Your daughter should absolutely not be cooking breakfast in any shape or form for your 10-year-old and your 8-year-old. Cooking an easy dinner 3 to 4 times a week is fine, but your son should be helping her with the cleaning, and they should definitely be responsible for their own breakfast. Cut the poor girl some slack. Not the jerk. What would she do if she was in a dorm or apartment? She needs to suck it up, Buttercup. It's part of adulting. One semester I did 19 hours, was on the cheerleading squad, so games once or twice a week and practice every day, and I worked part-time, all while keeping my own place. She needs to stick to what was agreed upon and maybe take a look at her priorities if she supposedly doesn't have enough time. Not the jerk. Folks are taking it that she is slaving away for 10 hours a day. She's not. She has to cook, like she would if she lived on her own, and clean, ditto, for a free place to stay. Yep, she is family, and got the family deal that one would not give to anyone else. It's time management. The only way you're the jerk is if you don't let things slide for the week before and during mids and finals. She's the jerk for squealing to her aunt like a little stuck-up brat who doesn't get her way. Keep on keeping on with adjustments for mids and finals. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his daughter? Please let us know. I think she'll be a lot happier if she just gets a part-time job and starts paying some rent if her dad is going to make her do so. Am I the jerk for interrupting my husband's work call to watch his daughter who threw up in my car so I could make my doctor's appointment? My husband is a workaholic. He works from 8 to 6 every day with no lunch and travels 50 to 75% of the time. I'm a stay-at-home mom with 3 kiddos. They're 8, 4, and 18 months. I do all the chores at home and also partially homeschool the 8-year-old. My husband never takes off work to help with the kids, as I am a stay-at-home mom. Well, I tweaked my shoulder and it's been hurting for 4 months. I recently got an MRI and had my follow-up appointment scheduled. I didn't even bother asking him to take off to watch the kids because he never will, because he always has something going on at work. But I did book the appointment on the family schedule and I told him about it in case a kid was sick. So I left the 2 older ones home with him as he was working from home. Well, my youngest threw up in the car after I had been driving about 10 minutes. I texted him asking if he would take off work so I could still make my appointment, but he wouldn't respond. I was able to have my mom come over and she was willing to watch the sick kiddo so I could make the appointment, but we couldn't figure out how to remove the car seat so we could wash it off. It was a new car seat and I didn't have the time to YouTube how to get it out and still make my appointment because at this time I would have been over 20 minutes late. Well, at this point I went into his office at home and I asked him to get off his call and he completely blew up at me. At this point, I had already tried calling and texting him. I get that I shouldn't interrupt his work call, but parenting is an equal responsibility, and had she been in daycare, one of us would have had to pick her up. Plus, he's on call 75% of the day. Am I the jerk for making him get off his work call to help with his daughter? Edit. I did ask my husband before I booked the appointment to watch the kids. He said he could, then last minute said he could only watch the 2 older ones. I assumed if he couldn't have interruptions, then he wouldn't have agreed to watch an 8 and a 4-year-old. My mom normally refuses to watch the babies. She will watch the kids when they are older, but not babies. I used to work as a lead accountant, but when we had kids with my husband's travel, I quit work because I didn't want my kids to spend all day in daycare since I am essentially a single mom when he travels now with 3. I would use up all of my sick days in a heartbeat because he would never agree to take off since he's the one earning more. We're on a budget, so paying for a babysitter is not an option. As to him being a workaholic, he works well over 10 hours a day on the days he's traveling and will not even call the kids every day as he's too busy at work or at clients' dinners. Also, even if he were in an office, if a kid was sick and I worked, one of us would have to pick up the kid from school or daycare. Emergencies happen. And yes, my mom in the end did agree to take care of the baby. I took her car, got to the appointment about 15 minutes late, but it was 90 in Texas, and the $500 car seat would be trash sitting in the sun, so he did end up taking it out. I don't get it. Your mom came over, so the sick kid is being taken care of. Why did you need to get him off his work call? Edit. I'll go with you're the jerk. I think this was poor planning. If your mother was able to be there anyways, perhaps she should have been there before you left. Your husband is working from home. Working. And if he didn't happen to be working from home, then you would have had to solve your own inability to remove your own car seat. And then he's working from home, so he shouldn't have the responsibility of watching kids while trying to financially support a family of 5. I bet he's stressed about trying to ensure he's able to maintain financial stability on a single income. I recognize you had to attend your appointment, but it's absurd you wanted to bring a baby there. You should have made alternative arrangements, and none of this would have happened. Maybe it's everyone sucks, maybe it's you're the jerk. Either way, you're not an innocent victim in this story. He's on call 75% of the day? Yeah, OP. It's called having a job. OP is fine with the money coming in from this cadence of work, but gets passive-aggressive when the time allocated to earn for the family is not to her liking. Being out of town half the year when you have a young family is not sustainable, especially when you're still very busy with work when you're at home. Dude is going to be a stranger to his kids, and they will be on a fast train to divorce with this schedule. Sometimes it's better to downsize your life in order to achieve better work-life balance. Nothing in this post indicates that OP has high lifestyle expectations that are causing husband to work so much. Your tone is kind of gross. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I do try to schedule things around my husband, but when I can't, I don't hesitate to ask him for help. He may not always be able to step in with the kids, in which case I arrange someone else. But I'm not scared to ask him, and he does try to make it work. He also spends a lot of time with the kids generally and makes much less money than he's capable of because he's purposely pursuing a career path that allows that. Time to have a very serious discussion with your husband. You sound so resentful, you guys can't go on like this. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.